Hello and welcome to the latest edition of my podcast today. I'm delighted to be joined by Kieran Maguire on Wigan Athletics' biggest eve in a very long time. Tomorrow it'll be the points appeal to find out whether Wigan will be getting the 12-point deduction, and it's going to be an absolutely massive day. And Kieran, who's been excellent throughout, he hosts his own podcast, The Price of Football, and he's going to give a bit of insight into the appeal, the process, and obviously the counter arguments and obviously Wigan's chances of winning. First and foremost, how are you doing?
I'm grand, thanks, Jay. Thanks for the invite. Sorry for the circumstances again in which we're talking. One day I'll come on to somebody's podcast about some good news, but it's been a long time since that was the case.
Absolutely. So Friday is so important for Wigan Athletic. Can you talk us through the appeal process first and foremost?
Right. Under EFL regulations, if a club goes into administration, an automatic 12-point penalty is triggered at the end of the season. And that will depend upon where the club finishes. So because Wigan finished above the relegation zone, the penalty was triggered, which of course has taken them into the bottom three. If you then take a look at the small print of the EFL Constitution, there is something called force majeure. Now, force majeure is circumstances beyond anybody's control. It's an event which could not be anticipated, which resulted in the club going into administration. So this is forming the basis, my understanding, of Wigan's defence, and I think the club were initially trying to link that to COVID-19, and if that's the case, I'm not overly confident, and the reason why I say that was that people knew about COVID-19 before the sale of Wigan Athletic Football Club from IEC to the Next Leader Fund. So if that's going to form the basis of the defence, then I think the QC representing Wigan, who is an excellent QC, by the way, is going to have his work cut out. If there are other reasons which have come to light, and I think everybody knows that the legal circumstances and the unusual nature of the takeover by Next Leader Fund and then the transfer of ownership from Choi Stanley to Al Young have left more questions than answers.
Obviously, this situation is very unique. Having obviously looked into Wigan Athletics' accounts and business model and financial records, did you ever see this coming?
Well, certainly not under Dave Whelan. There was no chance of that happening. Dave ran a really tight ship. Under the ownership of IEC, the club did spend more money. It did invest more in terms of wages, in terms of transfers. And I suspect part of the reason for that was that the people in charge at IEC, who it is a gambling organisation, let's be honest about it, and Choi Stanley is big into gambling. He'd perhaps seen what had happened at Wolverhampton Wanderers, where a club had gone from League One to the Premier League relatively quickly, and he's also seen the increase in value of that club. So he thought perhaps he could do something similar. When that didn't manifest, because we all know that the Championship is a brutal division, it looked like he decided to cut his losses and to get rid of Wigan. But during that period, he'd effectively put in over £20 million into the club to fund expansion in playing and recruitment and things of that nature. So the finances weren't great under IEC, but compared to other clubs in the Championship, they weren't top of my we need to be worried about this club list, because you just assumed that they had the money to continue to subsidise the club, which in effect they were doing for the foregoing future.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people throughout this have accused Wigan Athletic of cheating. Football fans, can you obviously express that a little bit more and educate people about the actual case itself? Because it is pretty much proven that Wigan have not cheated in any way, and it is no fault for their own. They find themselves in this position.
I think the accusations of cheating was because Wigan paid out significant levels of wages compared to their income. But that in itself is not unusual. If you take a look at the Championship overall, £107 is paid out in wages for every £100 that comes in. And we've got clubs such as Reading paying out 226. We've got clubs such as Scunthorpe in League One or League Two paying out over 150, and so on. So yeah, Wigans were high, but they weren't the highest by far. And so therefore, if Wigan are cheating, then I could name at least a dozen other clubs, if not more, that are doing exactly the same thing. So those accusations, in my opinion, have no merit. So I think the people who are making them are just trying to score points in the way that fans sometimes do. It's petty name calling. The reason behind Wigan's increased wage spending was due to the owners, but there are many ambitious owners in the Championship, and also compared to some of the more unusual activities which take place in the Championship, such as the clubs that are selling their stadia to themselves or to the owners at vast profits, what Wigan have done is small beer.
Do you think we'll ever find out what truly has happened at Wigan Athletic?
I suspect it's going. If we do, it's going to be a costly experience, because the data, the documentation, if there is any, lies in the Far East rather than in Wigan itself. So it's going to involve either the administrators, who have a limited amount of money to spend, or the new owners of Wigan, who they might decide to employ somebody, effectively some form of financial private detective, to try to get to the bottom of this. But I suspect we'll never find out, because it appears to be a private arrangement between two guys in the Far East, one of whom has never been seen, the present owner of the club in the form of Al Young, and another one who just wants to pretend he never had any involvement, in the form of Troy Stanley. So trying to get straight answers, trying to get the paper trail, which gives any evidence of any unusual activity, I think will be difficult, if not impossible, for anybody. But if anybody does find that would I think it would settle a lot of people's minds, because I, along with many other people, we've just been scratching our heads, and I think there's a lot of concern amongst general football fans is that the Wigan story is disappeared too quickly, because we've had Champions League, we've had the Manchester City CAS ban being overturned, we've just seen the Newcastle takeover collapse, and with due respect to Wigan, we all know where we are in terms of the pecking order in football, and big clubs sell big numbers of they get big clicks. So it is important that we try to keep this story alive, and in the domain as much as we can. And to be fair, the likes of Simon Stone and some of the other people at BBC and Sky and elsewhere have been very good in doing that.
Absolutely. Linking back to a previous point you just made of the administrators having limited money, the points appeal is rumoured to be costing £500,000 to obviously take place. Do you think that's quite a big statement of intent that we're going to have a good chance of winning the appeal?
Not necessarily. I think from the perspective of the administrators, they know that if they sell Wigan Athletic as a Championship football club, then they could get, let's say, 20-25 million for the club. If they sell it as a League One club, you potentially are looking at half of that. So from a pure numbers point of view, they're gambling £400,000 to £500,000 with a view that if the appeal is successful, they could be better off in terms of the price for the sale of the club. £7 to £10 million would be the difference there, because if you sell it as a Championship club, you're one good season away from the Premier League and the riches that brings, as we all know.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point. Obviously, as a neutral point of view, what have you kind of felt of Wigan's production of the appeal process? I know you mentioned force majeure, but do you think there'll be more to that and more from the QC David Phillips? I know you praised him quite highly earlier, and I know he's been around the business for a very long time.
He's very professional. He specialises in sports-based claims and counsel. So he will have done his homework, and I think he will have a strategy for tomorrow to put before the independent tribunal. And that's got to be stressed. Whilst there have been accusations in relation to the EFL will not be making the decision tomorrow. It will be 3 people, one of whom will be nominated by Wigan, one of will have been nominated by the EFL. And these will be people with a background in law, with a knowledge of sport, and there'll be a chair of the meeting who will be jointly accepted. So a lot will depend upon what Mr. Phillips can come up with in terms of being able to prove that the circumstances surrounding Wigan's administration are so unique that it qualifies either as force majeure or that there has been some form of corporate misrepresentation or fraud or something of that nature taking place. And Wigan Athletic have been the unwitting victims of that. And therefore the 12-point penalty wouldn't apply. What evidence he has, nobody knows at this stage. There's been a limited amount of time in which he's had to gather the evidence. If you contrast that with what's happened with regards to Sheffield Wednesday, who were charged in November 2019, and we still haven't a verdict with regards to their potential points deduction, and that could be a further issue. It could be that Wigan still lose the 12 points. Sheffield Wednesday end up with a large points deduction and they take Wigan's place as the third from bottom. And then that goes to appeal. And it just becomes, it becomes a merry-go-round. It becomes a money-go-round. The only winners in this are going to be the lawyers and the accountants. And for fans of all clubs concerned, it's very unsettling. And it doesn't allow the clubs to start to prepare for 2020-21. Because they don't know what division they're playing in, and that has huge implications in terms of budgets.
Absolutely, and in course of preparations as well, because you don't know what league you're going to be in. It's also come out that Barnsley are allowed a representative at the appeal tomorrow. What do you make of that?
I think that's unusual, and also it does beg the case if Barnsley, Barnsley clearly are directly implicated here, because if the Wigan appeal is successful, then that has an impact upon Barnsley in terms of being relegated. And again, that seems to them, that it was a remarkable result they got at Brentford the other week. So you can see the highs and now the lows. I've read the press release by Barnsley, who are very critical of both the EFL and the lack of integrity and governance and transparency coming from other clubs in the Championship. So it's clearly they're feeling quite sore. And this is after they've been saved from relegation as well. So it seems unusual that they would be allowed to attend. Now, whether they're just allowed to attend in an observational capacity or whether they're allowed to put a case themselves, we don't yet know. I think it would be harsh if they were allowed to effectively take the same position as the EFL with regards to being part of the prosecution of Wigan. If they are allowed there as impartial observers, effectively to take notes, then that seems less problematic.
Absolutely. When do you expect Wigan to receive a verdict of this 12-point deduction?
Well, the season ends next Tuesday with the Championship playoff final, and with the EFL season due to start early September, and the EFL annual general meeting, where effectively shares are transferred between clubs in different divisions. We need an answer very, very quickly. If the appeal is being held tomorrow, there's no reason why an answer couldn't be produced within a few days. We saw with the Manchester City the amount of evidence there, and CAS still managed to get their verdict out. And I would not recommend people read all 93 pages of the CAS verdict unless they've got a problem in being unable to sleep. But the Wigan verdict should be more clear cut than that. So therefore, it should be quicker to obtain.
Absolutely. On a final note, this is just a question between myself and you. What do you think Wigan's chances are of winning the appeal? If you could put a percentage on it or anything of that nature.
If I'm honest, looking at the constitutional issues, I think it's probably no more than 30%. because the rules do appear to be very clear. The force majeure issues, certainly a pandemic would qualify as force majeure, but the pandemic was already in existence, and therefore the NFL, or what they're called, the NLF, or I can't remember what they're called now, the National Leader Fund, they were aware at the date of acquisition of the external circumstances facing not just football, but all aspects of modern life.
Absolutely. I know I said it was a final question, but I've got one more. Is there a chance that the points can be reduced to a different number? For example, if Wigan get a 10-point reduction rather than a 12-point deduction, that means Wigan will stay up?
That's down to the tribunal. My feeling is that it's an all or nothing deduction, because either Wigan have breached the rules, in which case the EFL constitution is very specific. This is a 12-point penalty, or they haven't, in which case there's nothing to answer for. And a 10-point penalty is the same as a 0-point penalty, if we're honest, because as far as the way that the EFL operates is that there's no prize money given for individual places in individual leagues. It's not like the Premier League. The Premier League this season, even with the rebates to broadcasters, for every position you go up in the Premier League, it's worth around £2.4 million. That doesn't apply to Wigan. So whether they finish 15th, 19th, doesn't matter. It's whether you finish in the bottom four. If you're in that 21st to 24 places, that's the issue as far as they're concerned.
Thank you so much for your insight today. It's been really insightful and really helpful going into tomorrow's appeal. And I'd just like to say thank you for coming on the podcast a couple of times during this. You've been excellent, and fans have really enjoyed seeing you on the podcast. And a lot of fans have actually tuned into your podcast too, Price of Football, because obviously seeing you on here as well. So it's amazing to hear someone of your knowledge and magnitude come on the podcast and obviously shed some light on a really dark situation.
Well, thanks very much, Jay, for the kind words. I mean, ultimately, myself and Kevin Day, we do the Price of Football. We're just football fans. We even support rival clubs, but we've always said you can't have a rivalry unless you've got the rivals to boo. So therefore, those people who are sniping at Wigan and other clubs, I think they missed the point of football. We're all bricks in the same wall, and you take away one brick and the wall becomes weaker. We saw that with Bury last year. There's a potential that same could happen with Charlton at present. They are going through some really hard times. It's happening too often. And it's good that fans from different clubs can talk and can use social media and things such as your podcast to realise that we've got far more in common than we have that differs.
Absolutely, and what a great message to end the podcast. So thank you all for watching, and thanks again for Kieran being a guest. And I look forward to bringing you the next podcast. Who knows who the next guest will be? It might be Kieran again, but hopefully the next time Kieran comes on, it will be talking in a more positive light. Because I don't think I've ever had Kieran where we've spoke about anything positive. It's all been the nitty-gritty hard stuff.
Yeah, I'm the Grim Reaper of social media when it comes to football club news, and I just wish I had some happier stuff to talk about on a regular basis.
Yeah, let's hope we can have some happy stuff in the next few weeks about our new buyer. But thank you so much and take care.